You know, people often think that when someone misses you, it's going to be loud and obvious. But that's rarely the case, especially when it comes to a woman who's trying to keep her pride intact. When she really starts to feel the absence, the first thing you'll notice isn't a confession or a long message. It's subtle. It's almost invisible unless you're paying close attention. She'll reappear, not with words, but with presence. Quiet, indirect, and almost casual, as if she's trying to convince even herself that it doesn't mean anything, but it does. It starts with her showing up in digital spaces she once avoided. She'll watch your stories. She'll like a photo from weeks ago, or maybe one that includes something nostalgic or symbolic. These aren't accidents. These are small, calculated expressions of emotional hesitation. What she's doing is feeling out your emotional temperature, trying to understand if there's still warmth there without having to admit that she cares. And what's fascinating is that this type of reappearance isn't impulsive. It's usually the result of a long internal battle. She's been suppressing her emotions, trying to convince herself that she's moved on. But then something breaks through. Maybe it's a memory or the realization that silence hasn't brought her peace. And that's when she begins to shift. But again, she won't say it directly. She wants to be noticed without risking rejection. That's why she chooses indirect methods. It's safer. Her logic is rooted in fear and emotional calculation. If she reaches out and you don't respond the way she hopes, it reaffirms a painful story she's been trying to silence. But if she can get your attention without asking for it, without putting herself fully on the line, then maybe, just maybe, she still holds some power in your world. That's the thinking. It's not manipulative, it's protective, and it's incredibly human. And you might wonder, why not just be honest? Why not just say, I miss you? But vulnerability is dangerous, especially when emotions have already been bruised. It's far easier to press like on a photo than to press send on a message that says, I'm not over you. So she chooses the former, hoping you'll read into it, hoping you'll make the next move, hoping you'll see through the silence and recognize the emotional presence hiding behind it. This is the paradox of longing. It often disguises itself as distance. The more she misses you, the more carefully she treads. Her reappearance isn't always a knock at your door. Sometimes it's just a shadow in your periphery. But if you know what to look for, it's unmistakably her. And that's the irony. When she really starts to miss you, she won't shout, she'll whisper. One of the most telling signs that she misses you, truly, deeply, comes not in grand gestures, but in the small, unguarded moments when curiosity overrides her pride. It shows up in her subtle attempts to peek into your world without giving away too much of hers. When she starts asking mutual friends how you're doing, what you've been up to, or if you've mentioned her. That's not idle chatter. That's a woman trying to gather information without exposing her emotional position. It's as though she's circling the perimeter of your life again, cautiously, not ready to knock, but unwilling to walk away completely. She wants to know if you're okay, if you've changed, if you've forgotten her. But instead of coming to you directly, she places herself just outside your line of sight. And if you pay attention, you'll start to notice the pattern. Maybe a friend randomly brings her name up in a conversation, or she suddenly comments on something unrelated through someone else. These aren't coincidences. They're quiet invitations to notice that she's still emotionally tethered to you. And it goes deeper than that. What's really happening is that she's wrestling with her own emotions. The silence has become too loud. The detachment that once gave her power now feels like a prison. And so she begins to search, not just for you, but for signs of you. She wants to see if you're hurting too, if you're moving on, if you've replaced what she once meant to you. That information matters to her because it defines the story she tells herself at night when her mind replays all the moments she thought she had buried. But again, don't expect directness. This kind of emotional investigation is almost always masked as indifference. She'll pretend it's all casual. How's he been here? Did he say anything about me there? But beneath that, there's a deeper emotional thread being pulled. She's trying to maintain a connection while preserving the illusion that she doesn't need one. And that's not weakness, that's vulnerability masked in strategy. You see, women who miss someone rarely want to be the first to admit it. Not because they're manipulative, but because they've been taught through pain, through pride, through experience, that vulnerability can be punished. So instead of reaching out and saying, I miss you, They find other ways to feel close. They reach through other people. They drop hints. They observe from a distance. And sometimes they even convince themselves that they're just being curious. But the truth always leaks through in the patterns. And if you've truly meant something to her, if the connection you shared left a mark, this curiosity isn't just a passing phase. It lingers. It haunts her. She replays memories. She revisits old texts. She wonders if you think about her the way she thinks about you. She imagines what you'd say if she did reach out. But the fear of being met with indifference, of being reminded that you've moved on and she hasn't, often stops her from saying anything at all. That's the emotional paradox so many people live in. They ache in silence, hoping the other person breaks first. But behind the silence, there's noise, so much noise. When she starts asking about you, even indirectly, it's because that silence has become unbearable. It's her way of dipping her toes into emotional waters without diving in. It's her way of finding out if there's still a place for her in your world before she dares to show her face in it again. So if you catch wind that she's asking about you, don't brush it off. Don't assume it's meaningless. That tiny thread of curiosity is often the very first sign that her emotions are pulling her back toward you, even if she's fighting them. And while she might not say it aloud, her actions are already speaking in volumes. When she starts seeking you through others, it's because you've never really left her mind. It's interesting how people often communicate the most in the silence between their words. You can sense when someone is trying to reconnect, not through direct statements, but through proximity, through their sudden appearance in the same places you happen to be. When she starts showing up in your orbit again, it's rarely accidental. She'll find a way to appear where she knows you might be, but she won't acknowledge it outright. She'll pretend it's all coincidental, that she just happened to stop by, that the timing was random. But deep down, you know better. People don't suddenly shift their routines for no reason. They move with purpose, even if they won't admit it to themselves. What she's doing is testing the waters. She's trying to feel out your reaction without having to ask you directly how you feel. It's safer for her to gauge your interest from a distance than to risk being vulnerable. And maybe she's not even aware of how deliberate she's being. That's the complexity of human psychology. Our actions often betray our emotions before our words do. She may tell herself she's just living her life, but when she keeps ending up in your periphery, there's usually something unresolved lingering beneath the surface. She wants to see how you react when you see her again. Will you look her way? Will you ignore her? Will you approach her? Or will you leave her standing there in silence, trying to pretend none of it affects her? Because if she really didn't care, she wouldn't need to see you at all. She wouldn't place herself in situations where there's even the possibility of you running into her. That behavior speaks volumes. And if you pay close attention, you'll hear what she's not saying. The subtle part of this is the way she masks it. She won't dress up her intentions. She might come off cool, detached, indifferent, even friendly. But the undertone is what matters. The timing, the frequency, the pattern. Those are the real tells. When she's there more often than she used to be, when she lingers just a little longer than necessary, when she looks around to see if you've noticed her presence, it's all signaling something more than coincidence. And it haunts her in ways she doesn't admit. Because when you don't chase, when you don't validate that presence with attention, she starts to question everything. She wonders if you've really moved on. She questions if she still matters. And that self-doubt creeps in, slowly, persistently, until she's no longer just showing up to see you. She's showing up hoping you'll see her. So when she starts appearing in the spaces you occupy, it's not because she's indifferent. It's because she remembers. And part of her is hoping you still do too. You'll notice something strange when she starts to miss you. Her social energy shifts. Not in any obvious dramatic fashion, but in those quieter, subtler movements that only become clear when you know what to look for. She might become more active online, suddenly posting more stories, more selfies, more thoughts that seem vaguely directed at someone, but never named. It's not coincidence, it's a controlled leak of vulnerability, a form of signaling, a way to provoke a reaction without opening herself up to the risk of rejection. Because if she really missed you and truly wanted to move on, she wouldn't be chasing your attention by projecting fragments of herself into the digital space you both once shared, it's a performance, but not necessarily a disingenuous one. People perform when they're hurting, when they're uncertain, when they're trying to find control in a situation that feels emotionally lopsided. She's not posting more because she's having the time of her life. She's doing it because she wants you to think she is. It's a play for curiosity, a game of emotional chess. If she can get you to wonder about her again, even just for a moment, she gets a bit of leverage back, because in her mind, if you're wondering, you must still care. There's a strange kind of desperation wrapped in that behavior. Not loud desperation, but the quiet, persistent kind. The kind that clings to the possibility that maybe, just maybe, you'll reach out first. And that hope is often disguised as pride. She may act like she's above it all, like she's finally at peace, but the timing of those posts, the sudden interest in your mutual friends, the noticeable presence in places where you might see her, it all stems from that internal tug of war between wanting to let go and wanting to be seen. When someone is truly at peace, they stop broadcasting signals. They don't need the world to know how they feel, and they certainly don't need you to see it. But when she's still emotionally attached, she can't help it. Her actions become inconsistent. She says nothing directly, but she sends messages in every other way, through silence, through glances, through cryptic posts, through selective interaction. And you start to see the gap between her words and her behavior grow wider. That's when you know something is unsettled within her. That's when you realize she's trying to draw you back in, not through conversation, but through the carefully orchestrated appearance of indifference. And ironically, it's your silence in response that drives it further, because the less you respond, the more she questions what you're thinking. And that silence creates an echo chamber she can't escape. When she really starts to miss you, one of the clearest signs, though not the most obvious, is how her emotional reactions become exaggerated in ways that don't quite match the situation. You'll start to notice a shift in tone, in the way she talks to people, even in how she behaves when your name comes up, or worse, when it doesn't. It's not about anger or sadness alone, it's that overreaction to small things that once wouldn't have mattered. Her emotional landscape becomes volatile, not because she's irrational, but because she's wrestling with something internally that she won't allow herself to confront directly. See, when someone genuinely misses you and they haven't made peace with that absence, it leaks out in sideways expressions. Maybe she laughs too hard at things that aren't that funny, or she seems overly interested in meaningless distractions, or she snaps at friends over things that would normally slide right off. That instability isn't about the world around her, it's a reflection of what's happening inside. The longer she pretends she's unaffected, the louder those misaligned emotions become. And it's confusing to everyone around her, maybe even to herself. She might not fully understand why she's so irritable, why she's suddenly anxious, or why she feels disconnected from people she used to enjoy. That's what happens when someone tries to suppress an emotional truth. It doesn't disappear, it distorts. It finds new ways to express itself, and usually not in constructive or healthy forms. You can only bottle something for so long before it begins to pressurize everything else around it. This isn't a conscious strategy. She's not sitting there thinking, let me act out because I miss him. It's more subtle than that. It's a silent protest against the void, a reaction to the absence that lingers in her environment but feels too painful to acknowledge outright. She wants to pretend she's fine. She tells herself she's moved on, but the evidence suggests otherwise. The instability isn't about the world being unstable, it's about her internal world being in disarray, misaligned with the story she's trying to tell herself. And what's more telling is that she probably doesn't even want to admit this is about you. That's often the most powerful form of denial. When the emotions are so raw, so unresolved, that the person experiencing them refuses to give them a name, so they overcorrect, they distract, they overact, but all of it is movement without direction. She's not centered because something significant is missing, and she's not ready to face it yet. What drives her insane isn't just the absence, it's the fact that she can't talk about it without breaking the illusion she's worked so hard to maintain. And that silence, that conflict between what she feels and what she portrays, is where the suffering quietly festers. One of the last and most haunting signs that she misses you, truly deeply misses you, is when she starts watching you from a distance. Not literally, necessarily, but in subtle, deliberate ways that suggest she's still connected to your world, even though she won't admit it. Maybe she lingers on your social media, not liking or commenting, but maybe she brings you up indirectly in conversations, asking mutual friends how you're doing, or showing up in places you used to go together, acting like it's just a coincidence. But it's not a coincidence. It's a quiet signal, a silent presence that says, I'm still paying attention. This type of behavior reveals more than words ever could because it shows the conflict she's in. On one hand, she wants to stay strong, to appear unmoved, to keep her pride intact. But on the other, she can't let go. She's still tethered to the memory of what you were, and that invisible tether pulls her back over and over into your orbit. She won't say it aloud. She'll act indifferent. But her attention betrays her. And you know when someone is still emotionally attached because their energy finds you even when their words don't. The thing is, people don't observe what they've moved on from. They don't linger in the places that once held meaning unless a part of them still yearns for what was lost. She may not be trying to reconnect directly, but her behavior is a soft echo of the connection that once existed. She watches not to be seen, but because she needs to feel close to what she won't allow herself to touch. That's what makes it haunting. It's not rejection, it's restraint. And restraint in this context is the clearest proof of emotional conflict. When someone really doesn't care anymore, they detach completely. They don't need to check. They don't need to know. They let go fully. But if she's still tuned in, even quietly, even passively, it means something inside her hasn't resolved. That unresolved emotion keeps her tethered to your world. In silence, in secrecy, in shame maybe, but also in truth. And that's the part that begins to eat away at her. Because the longer she pretends she doesn't care, the more effort it takes to maintain that illusion, and the more exhausting it becomes. Eventually, watching from a distance turns into a form of self-punishment, a reminder of what's gone, what's missed, and what's still alive in her, even if she won't admit it. Sometimes the loudest cries come from those who never say a word,